The historic James E. Pepper Distillery, located in the Distillery District in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Initially built in 1880 by Colonel James E. Pepper, one of the founding fathers of the bourbon industry, the distillery operated until 1967 when it was shut down and abandoned for over 50 years. After a decade of historical research, the brand was relaunched and the distillery was rebuilt. Distilling recommenced on site in December 2017 using the same historic bourbon recipe as when it was shut down in 1967. Located on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, the distillery is proud to offer a selection of fine whiskeys along with tastings and tours of the working facility. The distillery gift shop and tour operation is now open on Tuesdays, 6 days per week, Tuesday through Sunday. Fall is special release season, so please stop by and see us or check us out on Facebook for product drop updates in the gift shop. Learn more at www.jamesepepper.com.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight, as always, is my good friend, my bourbon drinking buddy, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing really well, and I noticed you didn't say live. You didn't say live.
I was wondering if you were going to notice that. I almost said it, and I was like, nope, I'm not going to say we are live because, I mean, even though we are live, well, we've gone down that rabbit hole before. But yes, I left out saying that we are live tonight, but we are in the Bourbon Life studios. We're going back to the online recording, man. So this is the first time in over a month that we've actually not been in person with our guests, man. So this is kind of weird. I was trying to set everything up today to get ready for this, Matt, and I was like, where do I plug? What? How do I? It's like, man, I forgot how to do this shit.
We have been wicked spoiled the last month or so, having so many great guests and doing in-persons, being all over the place, taking the show on the road a little bit.
It's been a lot of fun. And now the disappointing, no, I'm just kidding. No, we got a great show lined up tonight, man. We're going to have a good time for sure. So Matt, if you want to, I guess I should say that we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by James E. Pepper Distillery. We appreciate their support, appreciate what they're doing for us, and appreciate what they're doing down there at the distillery. If you haven't checked them out, go down there to the Distillery District here in Lexington. If you're in town, down there on Manchester Street, check him out. Amir Pay. He was a guest on our show earlier this year. Just a great guy, man. So listen to that episode as well and check them out. We also want to say thank you to all of our other sponsors. We appreciate them as well. Matt, with that said now, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. We have a throwback guest. He was the star of episode 62, and we decided we had to have him back on again. So he is the man, the brand manager with NULU Whiskey, Chase Hazelbaker. Chase, welcome back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks for having me on again, guys. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, it's great. You know, it's like I run into you every so often, talk to you. I mean, text back and forth once in a while or message on Instagram. It was a lot of fun to see you at the Bourbon Festival, man. You broke out the big guns down there a month or so ago. That was quite a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, man, it was cool to have 3 different days where we can pour some different stuff for folks and see different reactions on some of the more limited items, and it's just cool to look back from when we talked last on the podcast and fast forward about a year and a half later, and man, the whiskey world has changed. But it's been a fun ride.
No doubt. You're on episode 62. This is now episode 144, man. So 82 episodes later. So a little over a year and a half. So it was too long, man. We waited too long to get you back on here. So I know we talked about it and glad we were finally able to work it out. And even though we are not in person, as I say, live. But it's still good to be together, man, to be able to hang out and drink some whiskey together. And you were gracious enough to send us 3 wonderful whiskeys tonight. So we've got the first one poured up here, Chase. So if you want to tell everybody what we're going to be drinking on this first round, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we have the NULU Cask Strength Uncut Bourbon Batch 1. So this is a premium straight bourbon blend. This item will maybe release up to twice a year, but we're using some of our older barrels with this. So since we've been able to, be in this industry for a little over 2.5 years, we've accumulated some barrels. We all like whiskey. So, we set back some of the good ones, and then some of what the new barrels we're bringing in, we find some different gems that are aged. And so for this SKU, it's going to have black wax. It's going to be darker liquid just because it's usually aged liquid. The barrels in this are on average about 7 years old. There's a few in there that are about 5 years old, but they only had maybe 5 gallons in each of them. So it's truly some of our just shorter barrels, some of our more rich barrels, or just some, unique barrels that we think match together well is what this NULU Cask Strength will be. But this first release, we really think we blended something unique, something layered, balanced, orderly.
Yeah.
We're really excited with it. We've got a lot of good feedback.
Great. Now this is MGP juice, right? We talked about that on the first show. So that obviously has not changed, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And you said this is ranging in ages anywhere from 5 up to probably 7 years old. And this is 112.2 proof. So this is right up there in my wheelhouse. So I'm excited for that one. Now, the mash bill, is this all the same MGP mash bill, or is this a blend of different mash bill? Because I think you guys had, if I remember correctly, the 2 different, there was the higher rye mash bill, and then there's kind of that 21% rye, something like that.
Yeah. So the majority of these barrels, there's like 19 barrels of 21% rye bourbon from MGP. And we threw in one, it was about 6 years old, 36% rye bourbon.
Okay.
So it's mostly the 21%. What's cool about it is it's, I think, 5 different cooperages. So you got a little bit of Bayside cooperaged, MGP. There's like 14 barrels that were aged in Colombian oak. You got an ISC and a Kelvin. So, you have a nice blend of some different oak profiles and a little bit of diverse mash bills, but not much. It's mostly that 21.
So this is batch 1. This was your first batch of Cask Strength?
Yes.
Is it? So when did this one come out?
So we just released it. We were pouring it when I saw you at a Kentucky Bourbon Festival. We had just bottled it. So we released it to a few states. It's, we were kind of more limited with it. But probably about a month ago, it started popping up on the West Coast in Kentucky, on sealbox.com. We're kind of trying to spread it out to where, everybody can get a little bit of it. Because we will make more of it. But with this one, we wanted to release it in Q1 of last year. So that was the idea. We bought some barrels of 6-year-old bourbon, and we just kept bringing in truckloads, and we couldn't find any that would work to be the base of the batch, to where it ended up that I think the second to last truckload of those that we brought in was just like honey. Like out of 16 of them, 14 were delicious, and that was that base batch. So it was really cool to finally hit the lottery, and they were almost 7 years old when they came in. So it was like, sweet, it's older, and it was cool to be patient, and just make sure we produce something that's good and, consistently no one wants to send out bad whiskey, right? Like we all like to drink, and, it'd be tough if I was on this podcast, choking down bad whiskey.
We would tell you that it's maybe not quite in our wheelhouse, Chase, or maybe we can come up with some other descriptors to use rather than saying, man, this tastes like crap. we wouldn't do that to you. So Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
So Chase, how many barrels did you say went into this? Like 18 or 19?
20 barrels.
20 barrels. How is that size wise?
Were you not doing the math?
Well, some only had a couple gallons in them. I don't know, if we
one high rye,
put
man.
a couple
Come on, Matt. That was 20 barrels.
So
20.
I need to get.
It was about 3,500 bottles. So just, what is that? Right at 700 gallons.
Okay. So how is that blend wise for you in terms of number of barrels? Is that a larger blend? Is that a normal size for what you do? Because I feel like when we last saw you and you were releasing, it might have been just like batch 2 or batch 3. I want to say it was only like 8 or 9, if even that many barrels. Is that right?
Yeah. When we first started making batches, it was like 3 barrels turned into 5 barrels, turned into, if we combine these 2 totes, we can fit 10 together. And, so this is actually our biggest batch. We threw in some barrels that we had been holding on to, and then, we got some barrels in that we had recently bought, and they just all kind of came together well to where it's really expressive of the different oaks. But it's cool to play with, 700 gallons. You're really, after about 10 barrels, you're at, about 350, 400 gallons. And you're like, whoa, this is a lot of liquid we're, toying with. And so you really have to take your time and build it. And, sometimes you can make a 3-barrel batch that pairs with the 10 barrel, and then now you're at 13, and you just kind of keep building on top of it. But it's been cool to work with our team and, myself and a couple of the other guys that taste everything. It's really cool that all of us kind of develop together. We all weigh in differently, and, you taste, I don't know, to get 20 barrels to fit together, you're tasting, hundreds, because at the end of the day, you start dumping barrels, you're stuck with whatever that flavor profile is. And I guess you can start double oaking it. I mean, that's some stuff that we do.
Right.
Nothing's ruined, but if it was good to begin with, you just have to take the time to make it, good in the bottle, and, justify the price you're going to charge and make sure that everybody's happy and can enjoy it. Right.
Definitely. So what is retail, speaking of pricing, what is retail generally on this one?
$89.99 to $99.99.
Okay. All right. For 5 to 7 year old MGP at Cask strength, that's a doable deal. Like we say on the podcast, 90's the new 50, man, so people just need to kind of get used to that concept,
From a bulk spirits perspective, from a, barrel buying wholesale perspective, it is absolutely insane to see the rise of these prices. I mean, when we started doing this in February 2020, we'd been distilling a little bit, but, we were new, and, we got in 20 barrels, and, the price that we paid then is up, I want to say like 250, 300%. I mean, and then the availability is even lower. So, I mean, it's the demand's up, the scarcity is up, and then your price is like just every month almost feels like it's never going to stop being like exponential growth. It's just,
And you were talking, it's funny because you were talking about the blending, and I was going to ask you about that when you mentioned that, and we joked about it. I mean, there's some seriousness to it. In the first go around, the first episode, you said, you can always just double oak it, which is true. I mean, you can take a barrel or a couple barrels that may not be the greatest on their own, but you can blend them together, or take a single barrel and put it into a double oak, and it can really change the whole complexity and profile of that barrel. But I mean, when you're dealing with you guys fortunately have more barrels, but when you started, you had 20 barrels, and if you're like going to be batching even 3 of them, that's a large portion of your inventory. And if something screws up, you're like, oh, damn.
And we had no idea how to double oak or toast or, use toasted staves or, I mean, I wasn't even, educated on where to get brandy barrels. Like, we had to learn all of this so quickly, but, when the passion's there, that's what's cool is like, I mean, I find it interesting, all the different types of oak, all the different methods used, toasting and all that. It's, you can nerd out on it, but that's really what's making whiskey taste good is the wood,
Yeah, I agree. And that seems to be the big trend. And you guys are on the forefront of that with the finishing. You're really doing a great job with that. And it seems to be the trend. And like with Scotch, obviously Scotch is going to be aged in X bourbon or X sherry, but then also all these other casks as well. And I think bourbon is catching on to the fact that, we can do that as well. And you guys were definitely at the forefront of that. And now it's just exploded. But you guys have had a even just a couple years, but that still kind of puts you ahead of a lot of the other people out there that are just creating bourbon and haven't really even explored the finishing aspect or side of it, which seems to be, again, where a lot of brands are headed at this point to have something different to differentiate themselves. I mean, would you agree with that Chase? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, we feel like, everyone we talk to is like, people just want something new. Like, what's the new experiment you're doing, or what's different? Because there's so much whiskey and so much, really bourbon out there, because people love bourbon. We play with rye whiskey a little bit, but I agree with you completely, man. It's people want new, but what's cool is we want new. I mean, with something like this, it took us buying older barrels and paying a premium, but also holding back some barrels that, may have not been great at the time, but being in our temperature controlled warehouse, they went up in proof. They were in the wood the whole time. And, we were able to blend some different, lots and all. But then again, it's cool to do something like stave finish or rebarrel, or, look at what other people like Barrel Bourbon are doing, where they're blending different types of finishes. I mean, you can really start dialing in this stuff when you have the right profiles you want, how long it takes to achieve that. No one wants artificial flavoring. We want to just taste either the spirit or, what spirit was in the barrel before it. So it's kind of cool to be able to find what actually tastes good, and what doesn't. Hopefully we haven't screwed anything up yet. So
that's good to hear. But speaking of that, Matt, let's jump back to the nose.
Yeah, let's do it, because you certainly didn't screw up the nose on this one. I got to say, it's absolutely delightful right off the bat. To me, it definitely noses mature. I think the first couple whiffs almost had kind of like that, like a dusty aroma to them, kind of that like old antique-ish type whiskey. Then there was, as it opens up, the layers are definitely coming through that you were talking about. There was some honeycomb coming right out from it, and a lot of different oak aromas. I think you had said there were different types of oak used in this. It definitely doesn't fall to just one, like American oak or toasted oak profile. There's like just these different flavors in aromas I can't really put my finger on. But I also picked up, there's like some apricot coming through for me, and also a sweetness, which is like a Luxardo cherry, or like a Manhattan cherry, kind of at the end of the nose as it opens up and gets sweeter.
Yeah, that cherry note definitely comes through, Matt. I agree with that, man. And, Chase, from the first show that you did with us, I can never top Matt. That's why I always just tell Matt to go first, because once he does, it's like, okay, there you go. Matt said it. So that's all I can say.
It's so cool to drink with somebody that has a palate like that, because as Matt, as you're just explaining all that, like, it's so cool to just nose that glass with you. And, it's the beauty of bourbon, is drinking with other people, and just, because we're all just reminiscing and finding what these notes we can relate it to in our past. And, it's, when you said maraschino cherry, it's like, man, that's hitting the nail on the head. And, that's the beauty of blending 700 gallons at once. I mean, there's so many layers, and, I have so much respect for these big guys, playing with, like, how many barrels are in an Elijah Craig batch? I mean, I don't think there's anything small about it at that point. Like, it's got to be thousands of gallons, truckloads full. And it's just cool to be a part of it and learn as we go.
And that, I mean, that's kind of a neat point, and I would like to touch on that, Chase. And we may have talked about that before, but I think it deserves revisiting, because you mentioned Elijah Craig, and the barrel proof Elijah Craig is one of my favorite bourbons. But even the small batch is a good one, and but you are talking huge quantities of bourbon that are going into that, and they're blending to a specific profile. So they're pulling barrels out of multiple warehouses, blending them together, but they're still able to match that profile pretty across the board for every bottle. Basically, the bottle you buy in California is going to taste like the one you got in New York or Kentucky or Texas, or it's like McDonald's. You get a Big Mac, it's going to taste the same pretty much wherever you get it. But now with you guys, I mean, you're batching, and this is a batch number one. So you're not necessarily, I'm assuming you don't batch though to a specific profile. Is that right? I mean, are you kind of just taking the barrels and saying, okay, we got these barrels, these taste good together, and this is going to be the final blend just based on the taste?
Yeah. Everything, we've had a lot of people lately, they're like, you guys are kind of like a made to order brand. Somebody orders, X amount, and you're like, okay, we'll go to work and find something good. It might take a day. It might take one try. It might take, days or weeks.
Yeah.
At this point we have like 600 barrels on the property. So, we go digging a few times a week. And I mean, you get through 50, sometimes 80. I don't know if we ever hit 100. We're spitting the whole time. Of course, you cannot drink and stay married or sane. But it's cool to be able to just. Our goal is just to blend good bourbon. We like all different types of bourbon. I love a Four Roses. I like the Willet profile. I like, Buffalo Trace is just sweet and easy. Everybody has. It'd be cool to blend all the bourbons. Have access to, everything.
Right.
For what we have, it's cool to play with different cooperages, different mash bills, and what we're looking for, like with this, is that nose has dessert forward profile. It's old. It doesn't just reek of corn and heat and ethanol. It's once you give it some air, you really start opening up, and at that barrel proof of 112.2, it starts to show you that like citrusy, fruity, vanilla. There's like buttercream. I mean, the honeycomb note, like Matt said. I mean, there's just layers to it, and it's something you can really spend your time with. And with a price tag of about $100, we really want something that tastes like $100. So I guess in saying that out loud, it's like we just try to hit the mark with what we're going to charge, because we're pricing things based off of what we paid and then what they taste like, so we always want to bring value to our bottles. But yeah, man, it's so different. It's such a different approach to making a bourbon brand versus just always trying to hit that one profile of, fruity, delicate, sweet, brown sugar, or, there's the apple bombs. Right. And, we just want to be known for, that's going to be a good, rich pour. It's oily, it's viscous, it has all the requirements to keep somebody entertained.
Yeah, Chase, we talked about it on the first episode, so we don't have to go like in depth, but can you kind of give everybody the Cliff Note version, how you got into doing, because you kind of have a roundabout way that you got into this, so it's kind of unique.
It was totally by accident, and as the days go by, it's so cool to look back, because man, at first I was against the distillery. My dad is a financial planner, and he was a consultant for a distillery called Derby City Spirits, and the long and short of it was, the guy that owned it had a business partner who still works with us. He's one of our brand managers, and he's he distills if we need to, but I don't think we're going to do that anymore. But anyway, so Harrison still works with us, but this guy named Jay, his name was Ben, he made like $1 million mess. And, so dad was in for 6 figures, and, he had taken deposits on weddings and didn't do them. And he had sold 240% of the company and just made this big mess. And so from about 2016 to 2020, it was like, all right, let's try to pay off these people's debt, pay rent, and figure out how to make a distillery work. And until about 2020, it just was struggling. The distillery had no identity. And I convinced my dad to bring in some MGP bourbon barrels. In 2019, I fell in love with bourbon, and I was like, Dad, you got a license to collect barrels. Let's start bringing them in. And, he got 20 barrels on a PayPal loan, one of those Hail Mary passes that you have to pay back weekly. Yeah. And, by the grace of God, here I sit talking to you. It's like, we're buying hundreds of barrels monthly. We're bottling, 80 to 100 barrels a month. And wow. I mean, it's surreal, man. It's so cool to just start accumulating different mash bills and bringing in, I think we brought in probably 700 or 800 barrels this year out of our inventory at MGP. And it's, we've had to taste it, all of them at least once, if not, we're all right, we're rebarreling that. We'll taste it in a month, or, just right. But yeah, it all started with 20 barrels really. And a love for bourbon. And now I work with some of my close friends, and we all get to taste whiskey, and got an automated bottling line. It's hard to keep up with. Like, we need more space so we can have more liquid to run that thing. It's crazy.
That's great. I mean, I love this story, man. So that I would definitely wanted you to touch on that. So Matt, let's jump back, because we're kind of at the end of round 1. Let's jump back to the whiskey again. What do you pick up in terms of the palate and finish on this cask strength bourbon?
It's definitely oily and viscous, like you were saying, Chase. It's got a good mouth coating right from the second you taste it, all the way to the back of the tongue. Nice and oily, covers everything, a nice coating on the mouth. And the first thing I noticed is it has a heat to it. And a lot of times when we think of, or when I think of like a heat on bourbon, you feel it, but you don't taste it. But this is more of a flavorful heat. It's got like a jalapeno kind of cornbread type heat, not quite the earthiness of, I know we tried one when you were on last time that really had like a jalapeno flavor, but this like is a little sweeter, almost like a pickled jalapeno cornbread type aroma or taste to it. Then it's nice and oaky. The wood comes through. You can definitely tell that there's been some influence of the barrel on it, and a nice long spicy finish that really just coats the mouth and kind of dances the entire way down.
Yeah, and I still get that cherry note you talked about on the nose, Matt. That kind of comes through as well for me. Maybe a little bit of that brown sugar flavor as well still comes through. Definitely some of the oak, like you said, but definitely that heat. Like you said, it's not like a black pepper. It's not necessarily a cinnamon. Mm-hmm. It's just it's a heat. But it's not like it's not like you're drinking 140 proof or something, not heat in that type of way. But yeah, kind of jalapeno like, Matt, which is funny because I remember our last one we did with Chase, we're sitting over there and you're like, this kind of like a jalapeno. And Chase was like, it is. That's right. I think it was like nobody had ever thought about, hadn't thought about the jalapeno aspect of a bourbon before, but that was kind of interesting, Matt. So funny you say that again. But I see exactly what you're talking about there. Chase, what do you think?
Man, it's so cool to hear when we taste people on this. It's like I almost question if we didn't just blend it enough. But I mean, we ran it through a pump system for like hours, so I know it was blended. But you're spot on with it. You're anything but but wrong. But it's so cool that you can pinpoint that, or Mark's getting more of the brown sugar and the cherry on top of it. You can come back to this pour in 15 minutes and you might think something completely different. It's just, it's so cool.
Well, I can't, mine's gone. So I'd have to, pour another one.
Yeah, man. You got a bottle, enjoy it as much.
That's right.
Yeah, you're definitely, right. Chase, when you touched on the fact that there are multiple layers with it, I think that is a very great way to describe this, from the nose to the palate to the finish on it. It's very layered. And I see what you're saying, and just letting it sit and letting more come out, because each sip has been a little bit different. Definitely on the nose, it really opened up the entire time it was sitting in the glass, and you did a really great job. It's something that's complex, but there's still flavors and aromas that most people are going to recognize and they're going to enjoy and they're going to love. But if you really want to dig into it and nerd out with what you might taste, there's definitely that there as well.
Yep, definitely, Matt. All right, guys, we're at the end of round one. So let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Chase Hazelbaker from NULU Whiskey in just a minute.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsoffrenchlick.com to learn more information, and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round two of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, still here with me in the Bourbon Life Studios, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man, in front of that warm, toasty fireplace?
I was just going to comment on the fireplace, Mark. It's you never want to get rid of me. Turn this fireplace on. I could sit by this thing all day. I'm loving it.
So now I know if I want to make a fast podcast, I leave the heat off downstairs.
Yeah, turn on the AC, fireplace off. Tell me I can't wear my slippers inside.
That's right.
It'll be the quickest 20 minutes you ever get out of me.
and then Matt's gone. So that's the way to make it happen. Well, I appreciate that, Matt. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast, presented by the James E. Pepper Distillery. Appreciate their support. Matt, with that said, again, you want to tell everybody who we have with us, still with us here in round 2 of the Bourbon Life?
Absolutely. The brand manager of NULU Whiskey, Chase Hazelbaker. He's back. And Chase, what do we have poured up here for round 2?
We have the NULU Toasted French Oak Stave Finish Small Batch Bourbon. So we just call that NULU Toasted French Oak.
All right. The NULU Toasted French Oak. This one's got the white wax on it, which I love. All your different expressions have different wax on it, and the bottles look really cool. So I've always appreciated that one. But now this one is a small batch. So when you say small batch, are we talking that like 7, 8, 9, 10 barrel batch, or is this going to be a little bit larger?
This one was 15 barrels.
Okay.
So this is something that we will definitely keep around. We're really, really happy with the profile you get out of this. And,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So this is your first. So this is the first barrel that you guys did.
Yes.
On the toasted.
This is actually,
okay, man. And I've cracked all these bottles. I should have just acted like I was drinking something and saved all these bottles. So I'd had, batch 1, barrel 1. Damn it.
Hey man, there's like 3,600 of them, so I still have some.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. So there's plenty to go around out there, I guess. Then,
yeah.
Right? That's good.
So
kind of the same. Yeah. So this one comes in. This is 108 proof. So you had the blend of the barrels on this one. And this says the age. I think this one's age stated at 4.5.
Yes.
I think. Okay. All right. So that's just the average. So, that's got to be at least the youngest. So you do have older ones, I'm assuming, than in there. Is that correct? Or are they all right at that 4.5?
This is all from December 2017. And so they're like 4-year, 8-month.
Okay.
1% rye out of Speyside Cooperage barrels.
Okay. All right. So all this is the 21% rye then. So it is that lower rye MGP. Again, MGP sourced barrels.
Yes, sir.
And then, okay. Gotcha. Well, Matt, what are you picking up on since you're over there nosing it so hard, man? What are you picking up on that nose? You know what? I think I'll let Matt go first this time.
Thanks, Mark. I'll take this one. So Chase, are you finishing this one sort of like a la the makers, how they do theirs, where they're batching things and then putting the staves into the batch to let them finish in there? Is that your process kind of similar to that?
Yes. So we try to make like a generally decent, if not good, great base batch. And, letting
I like that.
Staves do their thing.
Nice. Well, you did a great job. I'm going to cut you off, Mark, and go right here into it.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Big and bold, fruity,
man.
right on the nose. Pick up a lot of juicy red berries, like a lot of red wine fruit. Like some cherry. There's definitely like a sweet grape, maybe a little currant with it as well. Some darker berries as well, like some of that blackberry. And this one has that true cherry on it as well that I pick up. We had it like kind of that Luxardo or Maraschino on the first round. This one is like kind of that dark, sweet cherry. And definitely there's a different profile that comes with the toasted French oak. I think that comes through like almost a little bit of bruleed sugar and like a sweet cream on the back of the nose too.
Man, I could chug this as you talk.
You know what I get? It's like a creme brulee with raspberry glaze or something on top of it. And as I nose this, it just keeps coming back to that burnt sugar, that creaminess that Matt was talking about. But for some reason, it's just like raspberry, like a sweet raspberry, almost like a glaze, a sugary raspberry glaze just pops out. So I'm just imagining a nice dessert, a bowl of creme brulee with some raspberry puree on top.
Do you get any of that, like kind of the mocha, like buttered waffle almost that's kind of in the background there? Or am I crazy?
No. The creaminess to me does kind of come across a little bit, maybe buttery So I don't pick up like a waffle, but I do get a little bit like a buttery flavor on the palate to it. I get a little bit of woodsiness too. But it's not like an oak flavor. It's I don't want to say cedar either, but I can't seem to find, but there's a woodsiness to it. A sweet woodsiness to, if that makes any sense, because it's sweet. It's woody, but it's not like a dry oak type of aroma or anything.
Like if a tree were made out of like chocolate, or
if
a tree were like made out of chocolate.
Yeah, there you go. It's like a chocolate tree, man.
Yeah, it's straight out of Willy Wonka.
Yes.
Oh man, I'm fired from my tasting job. I'm so sorry. That's it, Mark. There are no chocolate trees. Sorry.
Matt's hired for sure.
Yeah, Matt's on payroll.
Man.
Oh man, that's great. Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate that.
So Chase, I'm gonna jump in. Since we were with you for episode 62 in your place down in Louisville, I feel like at that time we were kind of seeing all of it. We saw like the bulk of all of your barrels were in the room we were recording in. There were tours going on in the background. Sounds like quite a bit has changed since then.
It's crazy, man, to be doing this for 2.5 years, and to every month is, such a rapid growth, and, the ins and outs of coordinating, medallions for barrel picks to bringing in truckloads of barrels and getting new American oak toasted and charred barrels. I mean, it makes you miss the slow days. It really does sometimes, but at the same time, it's like you wouldn't trade it for anything. It's so cool to be able to come back on here and be smiling and drinking and having a good time with you, because our lives have absolutely changed. Every month that goes by, it's just like, what the heck? Like, how it's so cool to like people at Kentucky Bourbon Festival, man, like I have 12 bottles of your stuff, or people tag us online. They're like, this is my first bottle of NULU. If this is the entry level NULU, I can't wait to try more. Like it's just so cool to be in a position where it grew and grew and grew, and then MGP lets you store barrels there, so our inventory has grown, and we have close to 2,000 aged barrels there, and combined with what we have on premise. Mm-hmm. So it's from where you guys saw, it's like there's no space. We couldn't probably have a table and chairs, and then the tours just look at a wall of barrels. They don't see the forklift anymore. There's
no forklift, man. Dang. You mean you can't walk through and stick your finger in a honey pot of a barrel that's dripping honey onto the next barrel? Can't lick that off anymore.
It depends, so it's like Tetris. It's like the hardest game of Tetris you'll ever have to play.
I can't imagine. So tracking barrels, what do you do? I mean, you tag them and
you've got like that crazy photographic memory though. I remember you talking about that, where you can shift things around and you know exactly where everything is. That's true, right?
For the most part, if I go out of town and then like, Jordan and Harrison will work in the warehouse, say I'm out of town for a week, I come back, I'm like, oh no, everything's moved, because I know they have to dig out barrels, and it's like, you move 12 pallets to find one barrel, and then 12 pallets, you have to move 12 other or 20 other pallets to make it work. And so it's starting to get, we were actually talking today, we're trying to plan our next truckloads. We're like, instead of just Sharpie marker writing, we do different numbering with a letter in front of it. So our B barrels are the 21%, C barrels are 36% rye, and then the W's are the 45% wheated bourbon, and then our barrels are 95% rye. And then we have them numbered, we're into like, we only number them when they come in. And so we just reached over 1,000 B barrels that we brought in. And so we're like, man, like handwriting for, 5 digits and all this stuff. We need to start thinking about like organizing it. Cause I know like at Willett, they have like a phone app where it's all QR coded and stuff. And all these distilleries have these different, systems. And
right.
We're getting to truth be told, it was a wake-up call. I sold the same barrel twice earlier this year. So, I screwed up and sold the same barrel back-to-back days. I didn't have them sign the barrel, and, just doing too many things and going too fast. And it's funny to see how we can keep up with all this and, new labels, blending these bigger batches. And it's fun, but, we're still human, and we're thankfully there's systems out there we can plug into.
Chase, I'm just going to throw this out there. It sounds like you need a distillery manager. I'm just, going to throw that out there. You can free up your time to do all the tasting and the blending and everything else. You need somebody to, come in and help you on that side of it.
Yeah. So convincing my dad he's convinced, he knows, but also finding the right person and people. And
sure.
It's weird right now. We're, but it's cool. We know we need to hire like more sales force, or like just somebody to go to help travel to these different markets. And, last time we talked, we were maybe in like 5 states or something. And now we're in, I think, like 20 or 22, somewhere around there.
Oh, wow.
And we're kind of just holding off on entering any more states just to try to focus on the ones we have and see if we can't give consumers what they want. And, some items do well, some don't, and which is a cool part of the learning experience is being a producer. But really where we're going now, we want to get, some core items, and this French oak we're tasting now is one of them. We have been so like made to order these these single barrel picks, these 3-barrel blends, 2-barrel blends, and then you fast forward a year and a half, and now it's like we justified blending these 15 and using French oak staves to, make it taste like creme brulee and raspberries and sweetness. So if we can make something this good, that's, this should be on the shelf for around 85.
Okay.
French oak isn't cheap, and neither are barrels these days, but like you said, 90 is the new 50. So, an item like this, we're trying to find stuff like this that we can send anywhere and hopefully make anyone happy. I mean, I love barrel proof as much as the next bourbon enthusiast, but this at 108, especially in the summer we just had, man, it's drinkable year round, so we're learning to play with water as well. And,
So how much are you coming? Because you said these barrels are that 4.5 years, so they're probably not losing much proof points. So does MGP, are they going in at 125? Are their barrels
120?
120. Okay, so you're really not, even though, I mean, after 4.5 years, your proof's going to be pretty close to that. I'm assuming you're not losing much alcohol off those barrels, right?
It depends on the warehouse at MGP.
Okay.
They also have off premise warehouses, so. It's near water there, and that really does play a role into things. The requirement of barrels is huge. So we're actually talking today about finding land and getting a warehouse big enough to where we can bring in all our own barrels and process the ones that need help, taste the ones that are doing fine in their original virgin barrel, and start getting them in the wood, because those winters in MGP are rough. Those barrels get cold and they stay cold for months, which means, that whiskey's not in the wood. So it's not extracting flavor and sugars. And so a lot of these, something that spends about 4 and 5 years at MGP, it goes in at 120, but you're probably an average of, I want to say about 115 is probably going to be your average proof after 4 or 5 years. Sometimes you get lucky and hit the lottery, and like you get a high tier that's like 120 to 124 proof, but it's not often for those.
Yeah, so that's cool. But so you're not, I mean, these are 108, so you're not having to prove it down a whole lot. So you're not really putting a ton of water into that to get that down to that proof. So was that just this one blend at the 108? That was just kind of the magic point for you guys on that?
Yeah. So I think at barrel proof, it was about 114. And it drank good. The flavor was great. It just was a little sharp and hot. So we found that if it's hot at 114, you can usually drop it closer to 110. And sometimes it'll just really bring up the oil. The water will integrate well with the sugars, and you get a nice rounded feel, but you don't sacrifice any flavor. So we brought this one down, I think we threw like 25 gallons into 650, and it still wasn't enough. And then we took a sample, and it was about 111 proof. And with that test sample, we tasted it at 110, and it was good. It was just a little bit warmer. So we took it down to 108, and you didn't lose any oil, any flavor. You didn't lose the nose, and it actually just rounded it out better. So it's cool to be able to play with the water and really test a sample and see where the happiest place for you is going to be to bottle it.
Yeah. And that's that fine City of Louisville water, which is super extra special from what I understand, right? I mean,
you get that Ohio River water that's super processed. And then we have that reverse osmosis system, and it's limestone water that's been reverse osmosis.
There you go.
And
there you go. I mean, honestly, though, City of Louisville does a great job with their water system, and they have a lot of bragging rights on that. And I was kind of saying that jokingly, but quite honestly, I mean, they do a really good job with their system over there. So kind of funny to talk about that. So with the batches then, again, we talked about profile, talked about the cask strength, not blending to a profile. The goal with this will be something you want to release on a regular basis. So again, will it just be what the barrels kind of blend together to be, and then you're going to finish it in French oak, not necessarily trying to match this barrel again? Is that correct?
For the most part, the fruity, sweet, vanilla, mocha. So you know how when you do a maker's pick, you pick your staves, right? And then they also have their limited releases where it's, letters and numbers or however they code them. And it's different, proprietary staves that are toasted specifically. And so we went out on the open market and found staves like that from a different producer. And so what's cool is the reason we're using staves on this is, one, it's economically friendly to the end consumer. And two, we can dial in flavor. This is probably one of the next big things for people because, one, all the American oak is already allocated. Wilderness Trail has their contracts, which Campari now owns. Evan Hill has their contracts with cooperages. We have an agreement with our cooperage, Speyside, and everyone gets as much as they're going to get, and then it's negotiated from there who's going to get more. But everyone wants more oak, but you can't. So people are figuring out you can shave and toast and retoast these barrels or however you want to do it. But when you use these staves, they're taking individual pieces of wood. They're not as big as a barrel stave, but you're able to have more surface area with the whiskey. It acts faster, but you're not sacrificing any flavor. Really, you're mitigating time. But the profile you get from it is so cool. I think we let this sit with the staves for like 6 weeks.
Oh, okay. All right.
And the flavor before the 6 weeks versus after is stunning. It is, when we first got these staves in, it was like we got a few to play with. We got one of each of the profiles. So there's a vanilla bomb that's a low tannin, high sugar, very sweet stave. Then there's a spice and aromatics, high tannin stave. So it really helps with the oil and the palate, but the nose you get, and it really adds like an aged quality to the whiskey. And then the last stave we're using is a high mocha, high tannin, heavy toast stave. It adds that like thick, meaty mocha, that wood note that we, that's really nice. And so you kind of blend a profile between the three of those. So we went heavy on the vanilla and kind of a little bit of spice and aromatics for the body. And then a good bit of mocha, just because who doesn't love mocha,
Right. Right. So I'm going to ask a question, how you actually do that physically, because I guess the staves are fixed to the inside of the head of the barrel. Is that right?
We're actually pulling the whiskey from its barrel, from a barrel, because with these staves, we're actually doing what's called double toasting. So we'll rebarrel straight bourbon into an American oak barrel and then pull it into a drum or a vat and use the staves. But before we go too deep, for this SKU, for this item, all we're doing is we're finding barrels that are good enough to pull, and then we're vatting them. So either in a 700-gallon tank or like a 300-gallon tote. And once you have that full body of liquid that has been pulled out of the barrel, it's done aging in its original barrel. We have a fixed profile that we can now manipulate. So that's why we're using staves, is because we can really dial in, this profile that we have of bourbon needs vanilla, it needs mocha. It doesn't need much body. It's got enough body. It just might have a corn note that needs some help, or it might have some ethanol that needs oil to really chill it out. Or, that's what's so cool about it is as we're experimenting with this, I mean, it's so much different than rebarreling. We've rebarreled a couple thousand barrels at this point, and it's a lot of labor and time, and
sure,
you can order char and toast levels, but the variance is so different. Whereas these are, you get 1,000 staves of vanilla toast, you got 1,000 staves of vanilla toast. They're all vanilla bombs, and it's so cool. You throw 6 in the barrel, and it tastes great, or however many you need to use. But yeah, that's kind of our process. Is we'll take straight bourbon and get it in a single volume, and then pitch tank staves, and you're using about 10 staves per barrel to toast the product.
Okay.
But you're putting that in the vat.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
you're
soaking it, and that whiskey, whereas in a barrel, it goes through the surface of the wood that's typically typically charred into the toasted portion of the wood, and then back out into the barrel and into the wood and so on.
Right.
When you have it in a vat and you throw these staves in there, they immediately, as soon as they get wet, it's the most bizarre thing. You smell the wood sugars like crazy. It's really? After one day, you can tell a difference between the original whiskey that was straight bourbon and the now French oak finished straight bourbon. It is so cool to see that those oils and sugars just act so quickly. And it's just a much more efficient way for us, utilize French oak, because new French oak barrels are like $1,500, whereas, that's a triple to 4 times as much as an American oak barrel, so
right.
That's that's why we're using these.
Well, Matt, let's talk about the palate on this one and the finish, since we're getting close to the end of round 2. What do you pick up on that?
Talk about drinkability. This thing drinks awesome, Chase. It's got right away, I get the sweetness from the berries coming across. It's like a sweet berry sorbet right on the front of the palate. Then some of the depth of it comes in. I'm getting like more of that sweetness, more fruit. It's like caramelized peach almost, a little bit on the mid palate, but it's balanced out by the oak in it. So it's not just like this crazy sweetness. And then the finish is really balanced. I get pick up toasted sugar almost to like a meringue. Like think of like a baked Alaska meringue on top, kind of that golden brown egg white and sugar, kind of toasty sweetness, but a long lingering taste on the end. This just drinks really well. I think your decision to bring it down to 108 proof of course I didn't taste it at 114, but to make it a little bit more approachable and to really let some of the sweetness and the different flavors come out rather than being dominated by some proof, which I know everybody loves higher proof. But I think the delicacy of that decision really brings out a lot of the sweet and the more tame and the more drinkable aromas and flavors that'll probably satisfy the biggest branch of consumers rather than just the high proof guys.
Very well said, Matt. I get some spiciness off of that too. I mean, I don't know, Matt, you talked about the sweetness and the peach and the creme brulee, the sugar, the you didn't mention marzipan, but the meringue. But I get a lot of spiciness off of that, which is kind of funny. I didn't anticipate, because I don't remember even the cask strength. I don't think it was that spicy on my palate. So I don't know if there's but this is all French oak stave, right? So there's no, but I like it. I mean, there's a sweetness and a spiciness combined, which is a nice combination. I still get that kind of the burnt sugar flavor that I talked about. But I get it on the palate, the finish, and it just continues. It's a nice lingering finish, very viscous, very mouth filling. It's a really nice combination of flavors and just an experience, a nice drinking experience. But I could definitely crush a lot of this at 108, Chase.
Dangerous, man. Like, we've brought bottles to friends' houses for events or parties, and by the end of the night, people are smoking cigars and they're like, "Oh, you're the bourbon guy. Let me try your bourbon." And that bottle's just done. It's done. People break out the cigars are out. Like, 5, 10, 20 people at a party, that bottle lasts no time. As soon as like the first person, this is good, and it's gone. It's so cool to see. So that's what we were going for, right? Like you still get the spice that bourbon enthusiasts love. Like that's where that spice and aromatic body stave comes into play. That's probably about a 10% of what the profile we're shooting for, where vanilla is probably 60 and the mocha heavy toast is about 30. But that spice stick is, that spice stave is strong, man. Like, 50% of that, and you're still getting, but it's so balanced, that vanilla, sweet, mocha, fruity, like just all these dessert flavors, that then you get that nice punch of tannin, but the water really mitigates it from drying you completely out. And then you get to enjoy that ride of like the fudge that comes on, the different fruit. It's just a great ride.
That mocha does pop its head up for me at the end. It's almost like when I'm exhaling on the finish. It just kind of lingers from the back of my mouth forward. I can kind of get that mocha, just a subtle flavor of that mocha, which is it's really cool. Now, maybe it's the power of suggestion. I don't know, Chase, but I do pick it up on the end of the finish. I'm getting that. So, well, yeah, this is definitely a winner for me, man. This is a great pour. I appreciate you sharing that one with us for sure. So let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be back with more with Chase Hazelbaker from NULU Whiskey in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3 Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.3chordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight, in person, in the Bourbon Life studios, it's my good friend, my buddy, my bourbon drinking pal, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there?
Hey, man? Mark, I'm doing great. I am in person. You're not just getting a recording. We didn't.
That's right. I appreciate you not just phoning this one in, Matt, because sometimes you just phone them. No, I'm just kidding. You never phone it in, Matt. You're always on point.
I could never phone it in with how quickly you put me on the spot to tell master distillers and blenders and company owners what their product tastes like.
What their stuff tastes like. That's why I do it. I always put you on. I put you on the spot first, Matt.
Yeah, because you got to keep me in check every now and then, right?
That's right. Because if you got some heartbreaking news for them, I want it to come from you, and then I can swoop in and pick up their feelings.
Yeah,
and
butter them back up. We are good.
Exactly
good cop
right,
and
man.
bad cop here.
That's good cop and bad copping in the bourbon world right here, man. That's why the Bourbon Life is such a award-winning Bourbon Life podcast, right?
Yeah, good palate, bad palate.
Yeah, good palate, bad palate. That's exactly right. Thanks, Matt. Vanilla, caramel. There you go. That's the extent.
And how many people in this world hate vanilla and caramel? Find me one. Exactly.
Nobody does, as far as
exactly.
I know. So we're working on it, though, Matt. We're working on it. I'm working.
No,
on
you
it,
are,
so.
Mark. You are on it. You are on point as always. You are the master of disaster over there.
All right, man. Enough about that. Tell everybody who we have with us, and he stuck around for round 3, which is very fortunate for us.
Very fortunate for us and for our listeners too, because you don't
That's right.
get Mark and I for another episode or around here. But we've got Chase Hazelbaker, the man with NULU Whiskey. He's back with us. And we have been talking all things NULU, and one of the most exciting things that they are offering right now is what we're about to drink on this third and final segment here. Well, I guess maybe they're not offering right now, but we just happen to have some, and we've seen it in a couple different stores. So, Chase, what do we have up here?
So you got a 6-year, 36% rye bourbon that we aged in a honey barrel for 6 months. And it was selected by Liquor Barn in Kentucky. So to familiarize everyone with the process, so we get empty barrels that once had bourbon in them, and after they had bourbon in them, a honey producer we know aged honey in them for anywhere from 3 to 12 months. And then once they dump their barrel-aged honey, we get the barrels and we fill them with barrels from our stock and let them sit.
Very nice.
Go in and out of the wood, push out some black honey, and the end result is something that people really like, we think.
That's a lot of honey, by the way. Just thinking this one, they're like 53 gallons of honey.
Did they actually fill it full? I mean, is it filled full, 53 gallons?
These barrels are, yes. So we have different producers, but this certain producer fills them to the brim. It's crazy to see what it does to the wood. It like petrifies it, turns it like black so quickly, and it almost like sucks all the life out of the wood. But what it leaves in return is, I mean, it's gold. Literally, it's honey, you know?
Yeah. And then some of those barrels actually will drip actual honey out onto the barrels beneath them. And you can walk through the barrel warehouse and find little puddles of honey on other barrels and actually eat it.
Hey, do you want to taste this barrel-aged honey that leaked out of this barrel?
Oh my God, dude. I'll never forget that. I'm like, shit, yeah, I'm going to climb over these 3 barrels so I can get my fingers in that.
It tastes
that
like
sounds awesome.
Honey
man.
and sawdust because there's sawdust in the honey.
There's stuff everywhere, but it's all right. It still tasted good. So I'm excited because back then we were talking about it when we were there, and the barrels weren't out yet. So this is how new are these honey finished barrels though?
I think we released about 2 in our first year.
Oh, okay.
I think 4 last year in 2021, and then this year I think we've done maybe 10. And a few, 2 of those are still in the warehouse, ready to ship out. So, as far as a percentage of our portfolio, it's really, really small. Less than, it's like a tenth of a percent of what we'll produce is these honey barrels. So it's definitely more scarce for us and limited.
See, I didn't even remember because I guess it was April of last year. I didn't even remember that you guys had actually put any out at that point in time yet. But I guess you had, I'm assuming then, maybe a couple barrels.
Yeah, it was so limited though. Like we didn't even have a honey finished bourbon label. It was, this is back in the days of, hey, we have this project. Do you care if we just send it with the NULU single barrel label? And, we figure it out.
Oh, okay. All right. No, that makes sense then. Yeah, I was going to say, because I don't remember that, but very cool, man. And Matt, what are you picking up on this one on the nose, man?
So
sorry, I got you.
Yeah, you got me on the spot. I actually need another second here, so I'm going to ask a question. So you are quite known for having a lot of different barrels that you're finishing in. That's correct, right? And like all sorts of different wax to correspond. Like it's crazy. Like just talk about your finishing barrels and where you came about the idea and where you're getting these from.
So, man, I think it all started with Michter's Toasted Bourbon and Bellmead Honey. It's like chasing the unicorn for us. It's like, can we make a toasted bourbon that drinks as good as what people pay, $200-$300 for with the Michter's Toasted Bourbon? Or can we make, people were paying $800 to $1,000 for those Bellmead Honeys at one point. It's like, can we make it for a fraction of that? Can we make something that hits like that? Because if you've never had it, it's one of the most honey forward things. But when you're drinking barrel proof aged bourbon that finishes brown sugar citrus bourbon, but it's just got a honey ride from front to end that's also barrel proof honey. I mean, man, that is something you're shooting for to replicate over and over. So we just try to find the best barrels out there, the most unique, but it all kind of stemmed from like the Bardstown Bourbon Company that was finished in Chateau de la Beau barrels. And then the other, that was an MGP. I think it was 11 year that was aged for 2 years in Armagnac. And then they released 11 year that was aged for 20 months in a Copper and King's Apple brandy in barrels. And that's something else that we wanted to replicate. So we have like 20 barrels in Copper and King's Apple brandy barrels right now. So it's all from, like we spoke about earlier in the show, like getting to just figure out what tastes good and research and develop. It's cool that someone took the time to finish something for 2 years. That's a long time to finish. That honey finished bourbon there is 6 months. So we feel like it's longer than a lot of the honey bourbons you can find out there. It's definitely not infused, but It's cool to get into the Ambarana finished, spending that premium for brand new French oak barrels from France that are, 100-year-old trees that were seasoned for 4 to 6 years. And, just the deeper we get into this, the more we have to explain. But at the end, the end result of good whiskey is what's so cool, all these different profiles and, something like this honey that, somebody that might hate barrel proof whiskey or barrel proof bourbon, this is 116 proof bourbon. You might have somebody that doesn't like bourbon say, man, I love that, so it's cool to offer that as a product.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, so what are you picking up over there on the nose on this one?
So right away, I pick up like an aroma of clover, kind of like the clover honey, kind of think of that like springtime clover field. Then there's a little bit of orange, but I think, so this is a 36% rye, and I'm finally getting some of that rye spice coming across. There's a little bit of coriander, definitely on the nose, a little bit of cardamom as well come across, and then some of that sweetness from the honey, but it's certainly not like overwhelmingly honey sweet, honey forward. There's like a little bit of like honey Teddy Graham or like a honey graham cracker to it as well, but it's not. I think when someone may think, oh, this is finished in a honey barrel, they're just going to expect like that you're smelling Honey Nut Cheerios or something like really sweet, really honey forward, but it definitely has the depth to it from that bourbon coming across as well.
Yeah, I tell you what, the first thing I thought about when I smelled this, Matt, was like in the summertime when it had just rained and you've got the windows down in your car and you're driving down a little windy country road and there's all these wild honeysuckle bushes that are growing on the side of the road, and that aroma, the rain has kind of made those aromas escape from the flowers themselves, and the whole, as you drive, your car gets filled with that scent of that light honeysuckle aroma. That was the first thing I thought of when I smelled this, was just like a nice summertime honeysuckle type of smell. So that was my big grandiose descriptor there. So not quite as impressive as what Matt said, but still.
Picture, you're the Picasso of mental pictures, Mark.
There you go. See, I'm trying to set the vibe, set the whole, set the whole mood here. It's not just about what you're smelling; it's about how it makes you feel and what it makes you think of, right?
Yeah.
So, so there you go, Matt. I got you.
Yeah, in my face.
In your face. So, Chase, let's talk. The last time we talked, we were still in the throes of COVID. It was April, I believe, of 2021. So, things were still kind of in a precarious situation. Nobody really knew where we were headed. Now we're kind of on the backside, though. Can you talk about how that affected you guys in terms of what was going on with you guys? And for some people, it was a positive. I mean, it had some positive impact on their business because they had to pivot and shift. I don't know if that happened for you guys, but can you talk about, what that kind of forced you all to do and how things operated and what it looks like for you now?
So COVID, unprecedented times, right? Like the whole world's still trying to figure out what the new normal is. And
right.
For us, it was, we had literally just took out a loan for these 20 barrels. And that weekend, like, I think it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday, it was Valentine's Day, 2020. I think that weekend, Kentucky decided, yeah, we're shutting down. And for us, it was like, what are we going to do? No one wants to buy our bourbon now. They all backed out because COVID happened. And, the news is saying we're all going to die. And so here we are, fast forward. And throughout all that, for us, we were able to liquidate some vodka we distilled as some hand sanitizer and donate a bunch of it. And, just really, that was a cool thing for us that happened, but really the main thing that happened is we built a brand in a very unique way during COVID. So, we started in COVID. We never dreamt to get to where we are now and to, sustain this kind of production. But throughout all that, like the old model for most brands is to be on premise. You're going to bars and restaurants, you're helping craft cocktails that integrate your portfolio into a cocktail menu. And, you're shaking hands, bumping fists, and being friends with people that like your whiskey, and are like, yeah, we can sell that to people. We want to show people that. So whereas for us, it was like, we didn't have an option. Bars and restaurants, unfortunately struggled and all. And it's, so we are like a 99% off-premise model where,
right.
What's cool is the relationships that I've made with Brad at Liquor Barn and, all the countless people I met at Total Wine and, all these other independents throughout the country. I mean, we didn't meet as many restaurant and bar owners, but we've realized that the best partnerships we could have are with these retailers that understand our barrel program and want to be a part of it. So a lot of single barrels at first is how we kind of started. And it's cool to be kind of on the other end of things. When we first started in 2020, despite it being COVID, for about the first, I would guess up until about the end of 2020, the glass shortage hadn't happened yet, right? All these glass brokers were still buying enough to, you need 10 pallets tomorrow, we'll ship them out. They're in inventory. Whereas now, we had to commit to 250,000 bottles between, we had to take them in a 9-month span. So by the end of March, that's when our, 9-month span of 250,000 bottles is over. But before that, finding glass, we had the COVID special. It was like a Russell's or Stag Junior bottle instead of this one that's got the boxy shoulders that we like. And,
Right.
Ordering barrels, like getting Ambarana right now is near impossible. It took like 8 months to get a container over of those for one of our brokers.
Wow.
And, so there's still some hurdles and all, but for us, it was, from a brand perspective, it's just a unique time. And so what's cool is, the market and economy we're in, like everyone's like, okay, it's kind of starting to come back to normal. The spirit sales aren't through the roof like they were during COVID. They're still up, but, things are starting to come back to reality. But for us, it's been cool because we grew very quickly and there was a ton of, business to be had and growth to be had for spirit companies, in that very unfortunate time for a lot of people. But on the end of it, now that we're kind of out of it as a, country and as a world, it's cool to be looking at the future for us. Like we can now do tastings in all states, except states that don't allow it. We can visit states, when we signed with our New York, New Jersey distributor, he was like, man, it's still shut down up here. And I think he even said, he had to get tested to go back home or, try all that kind of stuff is now kind of dissipated and we can really start meeting people face to face instead of doing Zoom calls. So it's kind of cool to see the things going back to normal and being able to build a brand and grow this brand in a normal way going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of weird when you think about it. I mean, you tell people, yeah, COVID did have some positive, from a business perspective, it's kind of weird to talk like that because COVID had such a negative impact on the economy and so many people.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it really made a lot of businesses pivot to figure out how they were going to adapt and what they're going to do. And obviously you guys were very successful with your model and how you grew during a very, very difficult time, man. So kudos to you guys for figuring that out and making that happen. Now, you talked about selling the vodka and things. I know you guys had distilled other spirits. You had other things that you worked on there and you had other things. Are you still doing like gin, the vodka, tequila stuff, or are you really shifting your focus now just to the bourbons and the rye, or what's going on?
Yeah. So where we are now is we're shifting gears of we're not distilling. I don't think we've distilled in the last like 10, 12 months. The last thing we made was gin. We've gotten to the point to where we understand sourcing and, taste. It all comes down to taste. Our still systems are both small and, we found a vodka producer that actually is an ethanol gas producer. So they make ethanol gas on a 140-foot column, 14-story column. That is cleaner than we could ever make it if we distilled it for like a month straight. Like one run through that
Right.
thing is
Right.
We got a sample and even our distiller was like, dude, that's incredibly clean vodka. And so we all kind of looked at each other and said, great, there's no labor. We just send them a check and they send us a tote full of vodka. Great. So, and we're not going to try to grow a vodka brand. I mean, we'll have vodka on the premises to make cocktails. Like that's where it makes sense for us. We can buy a tote and it might take 2 or 3 or 4 years to sell, but we're just using it to make cocktails. Whereas gin, we that's still I don't know. Rum, I rather buy rum that's already old than make some rum. Again, right. You can find totes of 8-year-old rum out there. I mean, you're buying 8 years of time. It's just hard to justify the time and energy for us now because, we're a team of like 6 people making, bottling, 15,000, 20,000 bottles a month. I mean, it just goes so fast. Like every month keeps burning up quicker. It's cool to finally be almost Thanksgiving now because things are starting to slow down for us. Whereas thank God for our retail partners, it's about to get crazy for them, right? Like, our last 2 months have been really hairy. So it's cool to be on the front end of that tidal wave that is the Q4 sales and have a couple of years behind us. But as we look forward, we're going to hire some more people, grow the brand, and really just focus on trying to give people what they want, and making stuff like that French oak and this honey. I don't know that we'll ever do, a 20-barrel batch of honey, but just because it's hard to make those barrels. But we're talking about buying land. So if we had the warehouse space to age honey ourselves, and hey, we can sell it out of the gift shop or make cocktails with it, whatever, we're just here to, drink with good people and make good whiskey and keep it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's great. I'm excited for you guys. It's a lot of fun, and it's great to see just in the last year and a half what's happened for you guys following you on Instagram. It's just seeing the growth, seeing how things have changed. It's really cool. So Matt, what do you think in terms of the palate and finish on this honey finished?
So as it's sitting in the glass, just going back to the nose, the honey is really coming out a lot more. I think when we first poured it, I was getting a lot more of the rye, and I was really enjoying that. As it's sitting here, more of that honey is coming out. And anyway, that's my palate or my nose.
He's just trying to come back and top my whole
no.
visual
I
of
could never do that. But the palate is excellent. I pick up like right away the honey, of course, on the palate. But then there's also like a lemon and some ginger. I think any heat coming across is kind of like a ginger heat, sort of that, not like wasabi, but nice warm kind of tongue tingling ginger heat. And it's got a nice like sweetness that I think is kind of like custardy. Tastes like a little bit of custard almost with there. And then the mint, there's the high rye. The mint comes through kind of late palate, and then it's got a really nice honey finish. The finish just tastes like straight kind of honey right out of the hive or right off of the comb. It's got that really, really nice warming, almost like a sticky kind of finish in the palate. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, and the thing I really like about it is that it's not like it doesn't have obviously any like artificial type of honey. It doesn't come across that way. I mean, some honey bourbon or whatever, you taste it and you're like, yeah, I kind of missed the mark on that one, but this one definitely not, man. It's right on there. That, like Matt said, you get that honey right up front. It continues through. It's kind of fun because it's like that is like the one constant. That sweetness from that honey it's from the start. You get it through the palate, you get it to the finish, but then you also get that ride of an actual high rye bourbon. So you get those different flavor profiles that come in from that. You get the spiciness of the rye. Matt, I think you mentioned some citrus, maybe even lemon. I think you said.
Yeah, it definitely lets you know that it's a high rye bourbon.
Yeah, which is kind of it's funny because you've got the kind of that lemony flavor, that citrusy flavor with a little bit of honey and a little bit of the bourbon profile. It's like a hot toddy in itself. By itself, it's kind of funny because as you were talking, Matt, I'm like, man, this is kind of reminiscent of some almost like a high rye whiskey hot toddy that I would make, just because of that rye content, that spiciness that comes through. Because I love a rye and a hot toddy sometimes.
Oh, nice.
But with that lemony and that honey constant, yeah, man, it's just, again, this is one that would be even at, I think, is this 116, 118?
118 is,
yes.
I've got the bottle here.
Our bottle, yes, 118. Yeah. So I mean, but still, that's a crusher.
Yeah. I like the decision to use the higher rye in this too. I think certainly the regular 21% rye would be great, but having a little bit more of that rye to punch through some of the sweetness and some of the barrel characteristics that honey might have like kind of embalmed the wood and just left it with kind of overpowering honey notes. I think that rye really does a nice job to cut through and let you know that there's some good bourbon in there as well.
I couldn't agree more, man. Like using either MGP mash bill, they're so low barley. The corn they have in them, 75 or 60% corn, and then you still have 21 or 36% rye. I mean, it's got enough sweetness from the corn content, but that rye, I mean, MGP is known for their rye. That grain they use that's where you get all these nuanced flavors. The one next to the lemon meringue pie might be, berries and barnyard, but it's cool to be able to see someone else taste the base whiskey, but still say, man, that honey's just there from front to back of the book. That's kind of what we were going for. And Bell Mead, again, they use the high rye, and people tend to like that, and I loved it. If you've never tasted it, it's if you ever see it and somebody offers it, ask them for a double. It's good stuff.
We had a bottle. We had Charlie on the show, and he was able to help us get a bottle of that. Was it 2 years ago? I think,
he was
Matt?
one of our first episodes.
Yeah, but after that, we've not had any since.
Nice.
Unfortunately,
I hope this.
Matt, did you get? I think Matt ended up with that bottle. Did you end up with that bottle, Matt?
Yeah, I don't know how much of it's still around. Sorry, I just gotta.
Yeah, that's
be honest.
There you go. See, that's what happened. So we're at the end of round 3 here, but before we wrap it up, Chase, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what it looks like. You guys are going gangbusters, man. It's absolutely crazy. So what does it look like for the brand? What do you see how do you see things shifting, changing, growing in the future?
So I think as the market changes and the economy changes, for us, we have enough inventory to last a couple years. And so we're only going to acquire barrels that are at a good price to where they can be on the shelf at a reasonable value. From there, we're going to just try to focus on the brand, and we're not in such a rush now. We're not trying to make up for lost time and, cover debts and fix a broken business. We're really in a great position to be able to go forward and experiment and just continue to try to innovate. So like that second thing we tasted, the French oak, and now the honey, here in about 3 to 9 months, we'll have French oak finished bourbon that we then threw in a honey barrel. So now that we just have more time and patience, we can really start doing some unique stuff that's like, man, that took 2 years to plan, but it's beautiful, it's unique, it's delicious. There's 600 bottles of it, and I want to drink them all. It's so as the brand grows, we're really just going to try to innovate and continue to go off of a passion standpoint of, what do we want to do? We've all drank a ton of MGP, but what can we do with it to make it good and better, and try to keep it on the shelf at an affordable price.
Yeah. So you see that continuing to be your model then, sourcing MGP, you think, or do you have any other plans to look at contract distilling with anybody, or can you talk about that, or is there anything working there?
Yeah. So we've decided NULU is going to be all MGP. We have enough stock. Okay. We have enough relationships. We can secure, anywhere from 20 to 200 barrels a month of decent priced MGP bourbon. And, we can make it taste really good and unique. We have a new double toasted coming on. Finish it in American oak, and then you finish it with the French oak staves. So we're finding different ways to make something that, I don't know if anyone else has ever done that, but finding ways just to make your run-of-the-mill MGP taste absolutely, different and unique. But we're starting to we want to do about 1,200 new makes a year. We'll have Kentucky distilleries and different mash bills and different char levels and toast levels and different, distilleries that'll lay down stuff for us. But at the same time, we're going to buy, because we have time, 1, 2, 3, 4 year Kentucky and Indiana. So it's cool to really start growing that inventory of, there's kind of a NULU inventory in one pocket. And then there's like, sky's the limit. Who knows what we're going to do with these weeded wilderness trails we just got and these random,
right.
So that's kind of the future as barrels become available. But man, I'm sure we could have a whole nother few episodes talking about how Bardstown bought Green River and how, Wilderness Trail just got bought by Campari and everyone's tightening up and the demand for barrels is crazy. But to not go too deep into that, that's kind of what's on the horizon for us, is just to enjoy the ride and listen to what consumers want and try to just have fun doing it.
Very cool. So Chase, where can our listeners find more information about you guys and find your product?
So for now, the best source of information is our Instagram at NULU Whiskey. We're in the process of making a new website. Once that gets launched, it'll be a NULUWhiskey.com. That way we can have information on kind of our general SKUs, the French oak, the cask strength, just to explain in writing what it is. And we're also trying to compile a where to find NULU, geo map that shows all across the 22 states in the country we're in where it's available. And then if we're in any international markets, where to find it. But that's kind of where we're going with that.
Now, are you still doing the Instagram, or have you hired a social media person to actually take that over yet?
We have not hired anyone. I'm still doing it. I actually got called out today by one of our distributors. They're like, "You're too busy. You need to focus on it."
Yeah, man, you're going to have to give up some of this stuff. I'm just telling you, you're going to have to, I'm just, as your business advisor and podcast friend, I'm just telling you, you're going to have to make some difficult choices here, Chase. Okay, man.
What's cool is when I'm traveling, I don't have to move any barrels around. The team hates it because they're doing my work and theirs, but while I'm on a plane, man, I can write Instagram posts, I can write emails, I can get organized, I can land, and then, the week I'm out of town goes by and you go back and you're like, man, there is a mountain of stuff to do. So we're working on that, and man, just trying to find the right people and do this the right way is kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Until then,
awesome. Well, man,
if you need me, message at NULU Whiskey.
There you go. Well, we appreciate that. And it's always fun to get to talk with you, Chase, and glad to have you back on the show again and make it more than just a 10 or 15 minute conversation. And looking forward to coming back over to Louisville and visiting you sometime soon and hanging out, maybe drinking through some barrels. And just don't give Matt a drill or anything, and you'll be fine. And I'll bring the Doritos. But I'll leave Chad back here in Lexington, so he won't be with us. So
you gotta bring. I can't wait to have you guys and host you all, man. It's so cool to have. We got some barrels turning 8. We tasted through some of them. They've been in the warehouse for a little over 2 years. 125.6 proof, 36% rye. It's pretty damn good. I mean, it's.
Look at Matt's face.
Yeah,
it's just like
the jalapeno blueberry pancake barrel from last April.
Yes. Yeah.
Same run of barrels. They turned 8 November 22nd. So we just dipped into like 7 of them last week. And I haven't been that excited about what we do in a few months. But man, tasting something that is just skyrocketed in proof. Oh man, it is. That's why you do this. That's why you move barrels all day. And this is the fun part, getting to come on the show with you all. I appreciate y'all having us on, and it's easy conversation every time. You guys are awesome. I appreciate both y'all.
Well, thanks very much, Chase. We really, really appreciate that. So before we wrap it up, anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
I think we covered about everything. We're really thankful and grateful to be where we are, and it's cool to be able to share pours with you guys a year and a half later, and we're still doing this. We're growing, and we're just happy to be here, man. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Matt, what about you before we wrap it up? Anything you want to add?
Chase, thanks for taking the time with us tonight. It's always great to see you, always great to chat with you, and to hear what you all are doing. And again, it's really cool to see the more of an identity coming through you all as well with some batching and some blending and what all you all are doing. It's super exciting. So anytime you need some sweat equity, let me know. I'll be there. Or if that doesn't work, I'll just give you access to my bank account and you can just put me on the shipping program of everything you all are coming out with. Because, man, I'm alive. The future's looking good.
There you go. Hey, trade out some tasting notes for some bottles. How about that? Matt can give some tasting notes.
We could, maybe you can consult for us, a palate consultant.
There you go. That'd be great. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, Chase, thanks so much, man. Again, like I said, always great to see you. Great to spend some time with you. Thanks for sending us the bottles. We've enjoyed it. Obviously, love everything you guys are doing over there. And you're a very humble and good guy, man. So I love to see hardworking, good guys that are being successful in this industry. Because, the bourbon industry it's a great industry, but you do run across some people that are in it for not the right reasons, maybe, or just, I don't know. It's good to see a good guy that's that's having a lot of success, man. So it's just fun to see that, and very, very happy for you and everything that's going on. So who knows, man? Maybe there's a $420 million buyout in your future, right?
That's crazy. That's crazy. Like what do you do now? Like as Wilderness Trail, it's like, wow, we have $20 million. Well, you pay taxes, of course, and then it's like,
What do we? Oh, we still run our Firm Solutions or whatever. Or I'm assuming that's still separate, right? So they still make millions of dollars off of their yeast products, man. So who knows? But anyway, man. So hopefully the Bourbon Fairies will bless NULU with such an opportunity somewhere down the road, man. But until that point in time, we're happy to have you on here drinking with us, man. So with that said, I'm going to thank all of our sponsors again. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by the James E. Pepper Distillery. So we appreciate their support. Check them out down there in the Bourbon Distillery District on Manchester. If you're down here in Lexington at some point, give them a shout out. Listen to the episode with Amir Pay that we did earlier this year. It was a great episode. Really enjoy what he's doing. He's a hardworking guy as well. Has done a lot of great work to rebuild that brand. So check that out. We also want to thank all our sponsors. Appreciate what they do for us. Thank you all, our listeners. We appreciate you guys. And of course, we would not be doing what we do if you guys weren't out there listening to us and supporting us. If you want to reach out to us, please send us an email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can reach us on Instagram as well, or also on Facebook. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.